Hello, this is Alex, and welcome to my guide for mastering the core mechanics of the combat system in The Outer Worlds, with some tips sprinkled all throughout. Although the game has a healthy amount of RPG and story elements, it's still a shooter at its core, or dependent on your build, whatever we call first-person melee games, but either way, I'm sure you'll be performing plenty of slaughter along your travels, and everything here should help you be all the more efficient at it. Tactical Time Dilation, or TTD for short, is your unique ability to slow down time to primarily line up shots to inflict status ailments. Think of TTD as a more flexible and directly influenceable VAT system if you're familiar with how that functions from the Fallout series. This can be used like a Max Payne or Fear style slow-mo, where the sheer fact that time slowing all around you is a benefit all to itself, but that is not necessarily the most useful way to utilize Tactical Time Dilation. Instead, use TTD to tactically place your shots on different body parts to inflict special debuffs that your guns will normally not inflict outside of TTD. You can greatly hinder an enemy in a mere second, making them far easier to finish off, cripple a fast-moving creature rushing you down, or you can jump into a group of enemies and immediately blind them all if you place your shots well. Your TTT gauge will drastically deplete every time you fire your weapon or move, so if you're using this more like a action hero ability to allow you to go guns blazing in slow-mo, you are only using a fraction of the TTT's intended purpose. Toggle TTD, stop moving to slow down your gauge, assess the situation, and place each shot strategically. Overall, Tactical Time Dilation is the greatest asset at your disposal in the Outer Worlds, and I encourage you to not only use it to play more intelligently, but also to pump it up with whatever perks you can, because it's just plain satisfying to use, and is what I would consider to be the perfect evolution of VATS. Since your Tactical Time Dilation gauge will barely deplete when you remain stationary, you can actually use this to your advantage to heal mid-fight by using your inhaler repeatedly when you're right up in the mix. The use of this does not chip away at your TTD gauge upon activation, so you can pretty much stand still, heal up as much as you can, and then resume the carnage. Since your inhaler can also be infused with various buffs as well as heals, you can turn your immediate demise into a bolstered comeback by socketing the correct items into this. I also recommend putting any raw meat that you have into your inhaler as well, since they are quite heavy and will likely fill up your inventory quite quickly. Instead of selling these off later to make room, just ensure that every time you use your inhaler, you're also making these work for you and clearing out that hefty weight in the process. There are 5 primary damage types in the Outer Worlds that all have their strengths and weaknesses according to what you're fighting, which is important to know especially when you're playing on higher difficulties. Physical is your standard kinetic damage, which is decent overall, but weak against armor. If your enemy looks like they have something on them that would be hard to damage with a knife in real life, it's probably good to avoid physically damaging it. Kind of a weird analogy, but it works for me. Plasma damage is good against fleshy creatures and can also inflict burning. I'm subtly trying to teach you little brain tricks to easily remember all of these, and if the enemy looks like it could bleed, think of red, which is also the color of the plasma modifier. Corrosion damage is good against armored enemies. If an enemy looks like they have a really hard or armored exterior, think about what eats through metals, acid, which is commonly associated with the color green in video games, and is also the color of the corrosion modified weapons. Shock damage is good against auto mechanicals, which is fairly straightforward. If it looks like a robot and makes bleeps and bloops, shoot it with the color that electricity gives off, which is blue, to deal shock damage and fry its circuits. Lastly, N-ray attacks cause damage over time and also radiates out to surrounding enemies, making this a go-to damage type for taking on groups. N-ray bypasses most armor, but is not incredibly effective against non-organic enemies. Using all of these effectively will allow you to take down your foes faster, or you could just find your one favorite weapon and stick with it, but be prepared to have to unload into certain enemies that resist its damage type. I usually go lone wolf in games like this because I feel like the AI companions usually just get in the way or alert enemies and often become somewhat of a burden, but surprisingly that's not the case here in the Outer Worlds. Companions function more like an extension of your character, and I've yet to have one actively do anything other than be helpful. For this reason, I highly recommend immediately investing in leadership to get to at least level 20 in inspiration to unlock companion abilities. These are actually more like your own activatable skills because instead of hitting the button and waiting for your companion to stop attacking, get into place, and then launch the ability, these will instead seamlessly play out instantly from wherever you or your companion is at, almost like you're picking them up and launching them into battle yourself, which feels much more rewarding.
Here's a little trick I learned in prison.
Again, since I don't usually like the companion systems in games like this, I really like the approach they used here because it feels way more immediately satisfying to work with them, and also, if they are tagging along with you, make sure you invest in their highlighted passive perks, which will often buff your own stats, and also invest in the companion inventory weight perk, which will greatly expand your carrying capacity. Using a workbench to tinker with your gear allows you to easily upgrade the stats of your weapons and armor at the cost of bits. Although the DPS and armor improvements are already easily worth the asking price, if you choose to further invest in science, you can actually cut down the cost of these by either 50 or 90%. Tinkering only allows you to level up your gear to 5 levels past your current level, but this should still never be neglected since it's the easiest way to improve your character in the entire game. This is not the only reason to up your science stat, however, because there are actually secret science weapons hidden around the world that will actually scale in effectiveness with your science stat as well. These unique weapons can also be improved to 5 levels above your character level by using tinkering. The science stat is one of the most vital things you can pump points into because it will allow you to constantly keep your gear at maximum levels without wasting too much money, and the science weapons, if you manage to find them, can completely alter how you play. Lastly, flaws, which don't just apply to combat, but a little of everything in the game. A character flaw can happen from repeat behaviors, like taking too much physical damage for example, that will then allow you to embrace your shortcoming for the risk-reward benefit of an extra perk point. Since higher tier perks are locked behind the number of total perk points spent, if you can live with the drawbacks of a flaw, it might actually be worth it to take it, especially early on to get to those higher ranked perks even faster. Say for example you want an easy free extra perk point early on, well consider throwing yourself off some tall ledges to take continual fall damage, which will sure enough give you the opportunity to accept your fear of falling to gain a leg up on the perk system, or simply reject it and go about your business.
Warning! Sam's specially formulated blood-out fluid remover has been known to eat through flesh. Handle with caution.
Hopefully that helped you out a little bit with the combat mechanics in the Outer Worlds, or at least assisted with your overall enjoyment of your adventure. Let me know if it did. I personally am really enjoying the game because it seems to smartly know where to trim the fat and focus on nailing its core systems, which makes it feel like it's never bogging you down with tedium, which I prefer. This might actually end up being a Game of the Year contender for me when the end of the year rolls around, and I'm thoroughly impressed by what Obsidian has crafted here. We're seeing great work from that team. If you happen to enjoy my style of informative content that helps you squeeze more fun out of your favorite games, consider subscribing for more, ringing that little bell icon if you already are, and you can also find me on Twitter at BoomstickAlex. A special mention to these top supporting YouTube members and patrons who have chosen to help fund this individually owned and operated channel. As always, this has been Alex from Boomstick Gaming, and thanks for watching.